Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Sunita Punjabi, ABD, your brain coach. We are talking about breaking cycles. And during, it's very relevant, especially as we've been coming through a pandemic. Oh, by the way, my hairs are like really crazy. I wanted to leave it crazy like this to tell you about breaking habits. The way that we break habits is that you've got to try something in a different direction. So let's talk about what a habit or a pattern or a cycle is, because they're all kind of similar. Habits, patterns, and cycles are automatic systems that the brain goes into, automatic neurological connections that have been firing together. So they've wired together. So let me explain. A pattern, for example, of how you feel about yourself when you're on a job interview or when you're being questioned or when your value is being questioned. It's actually a thought pattern that is locked into your brain. And there's an electrical highway that travels every time you have to think about your self worth, for example. Are you good enough? Those are questions that will questions or experiences that will stimulate a highway, a reaction, a pattern of electrical highways that get lit up in your brain. They actually start to fire. And this pattern, the more you've thought it, the deeper that pattern is, and the more that pattern has other connections. If you've thought a certain way, that pattern has attached itself to several things because you've thought it so many times. Let's suppose you have feelings that you're not good enough. That pattern of thought may attach itself to a smell. So you were at a job interview and you walked into a building. The scent of the building and the feeling of not being good enough are starting to be attached. So let's say another thing, you go to a social event and you feel ignored. That experience and the feeling of being ignored and not being good enough start to attach themselves, and now you have a pattern. The most important thing to do, the first step, is to recognize a pattern. A lot of people don't recognize a pattern because it's operating below the level of our awareness. So, what I'd recommend is if there is a pattern that you are running that is not healthy. So some patterns are healthy, but some patterns are not healthy. How do you know what is a healthy pattern? For example, brushing your teeth in the morning is a healthy pattern, but self deprecation and negative self talk is not a good pattern. How do you know the patterns that are destructive? Because you don't want to dismantle every pattern. You want to dismantle, break apart those patterns that hurt you or that destroy you or that are counter or against your commitment to your life, to what you want to accomplish. Those are the patterns that will actually probably start with an emotion. The reason these patterns have an emotion is because they are breaking values to you. If you look at the bottom of this training, you'll see the on purpose person. And you can see that purpose and meaning in our lives is in the center of us. And the way we do things, which is our arms and our legs, is an expression of our purpose. So when you have a pattern that doesn't align with your purpose or your commitment, then you're actually going to sense something disruptive, something negative. You're going to feel a lack. You're going to feel no joy. You're going to feel confused. These are all negative emotions that tell you that there's a pattern of thought in play that isn't good for you. So that's the first thing, is recognizing the pattern. After you recognize the pattern, After you know there's a pattern, look to see what need does that pattern meet. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, these are all basic human needs. Every pattern that you have is a behavior and emotional cycle, right? It's kind of like neurons that are attached together, kind of like a domino effect. If you've ever seen dominoes, one will affect another and so on. Well, a pattern that's negative for you, you may want to change it, but you have to figure out what need, like what reason did you build the pattern in the first place? One of the keys to understanding human behavior is to know that all human beings do things to feel a certain way. We do things to feel psychological fulfillment. We do things to feel safe. We do things to feel love and belonging. We do things to feel self esteem. And then we do things to feel self actualized. We feel things and we do things to experience satisfaction of one of the human needs. Some people argue that spontaneity is also a human need, which is possible. Maslow created the first hierarchy of human needs. Several people, including Tony Robbins and other psychologists, Tony Robbins not a psychologist, but he's a good guy. But other people have come up with other need triangles like this one. But basically, what you need to know right now when you're trying to change a pattern, recognize why that pattern is in play. What need is it meeting? For example, one of my clients wanted to eat less and smoke less. So when we looked at it, eating and smoking allowed them to feel love and belonging. She would eat to feel comfort, and she would smoke to feel belonging. So, what we did is we created a new habit, a new pattern that allowed her to fill those needs. You can't break a pattern and be able to stay with it consistently because the brain has a need that it was using that pattern to fill. Find out what that need is. What is it that you feel? What gets complete for you when you run that pattern? Then find another pattern that you can run. For example, one of the things I realized is I was spending way too much money eating out. And what I wanted to feel was I wanted to feel special. I wanted to feel belonging. I wanted to feel accomplishment. So I would eat out. When I knew the feeling that I wanted, I switched $100 meal when I would eat out with my family, of course. But when I would eat out, I went to Starbucks coffee. Again, not a perfect solution, but it was the beginning. When I went to Starbucks, I could smell the rich coffee and I felt special because Starbucks are, when Starbucks came out when I was younger, it was kind of cool. It was kind of a cool place to be. I don't know if you guys think Starbucks is cool. This is not about Starbucks. This is really about replacing one pattern for another and to make sure that both patterns before they're replaced meet the same need. So my need to feel special when I would eat out was replaced by getting a cup of coffee, which was less expensive. That was what I wanted to change. But I still met my need. So that's a simple way, a couple of things to keep in mind when you're trying to break patterns and change the results that you see in your life. Thanks so much. This is your brain coach signing out.